I didn't understand how hard, I didn't have enough respect for engineering and design and product. And so I came back to the guys that had started that business. I said, guys, I'm fascinated by software. I want to get into the space.
Are we recording? Oh my God. Better Product, the only show that takes a behind-the-scenes look into how digital products are created.
The business is built around them and how you too can innovate better product. I'm Christian.
I'm Anna.
Welcome to today's show.
After his first technology company, iGo Digital, was acquired by ExactTarget, now Salesforce, Dan Hanrahan, founder and president of Sigstr,
that's Sigstr,
needed a breather. He needed time and space to think, reflect, and reconnect. And for him, that was in the form of a log cabin near Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana.
Yes, log cabins, nature's accelerator.
Yes, obviously. So Dan, building a log cabin, that's where his entrepreneurial wheels started turning. Again.
I knew I wanted to get back to startups. I all of a sudden was a part of a very large company. I was so grateful for the opportunity, but I didn't have any space to sort of think about what was next.
The idea to launch Sigstr didn't happen overnight. It was all about timing. And for Dan, now was the time.
We had talked about it at iGo Digital. We would email our entire company and we would ask everybody to copy and paste a banner, for lack of a better term, to the bottom of your email signature. Go to the trade show, people would show up and we'd say, how'd you find us? How'd you know we were here? They say we saw it in so-and-so's email signature. We looked for a product to try to solve that and we couldn't find anything.
All right, now let's fast forward a bit to today. But first, Anna, what is Sigstr exactly?
Sigstr is an email marketing technology company which leverages your email signature as a marketing channel. They're doing some pretty innovative stuff with their integrations, which we dive into, and they're launching a new product, Relationship Intelligence. Finally, we'll end the conversation with how to evolve, not as a person, as a product company, from its first user to its millionth user.
I think Dan might actually teach us how to evolve as a person as well. I don't want to oversell it.
We could probably all learn a little bit about evolving from Dan.
Now that we're all caught up, let's get to the point in the conversation where I asked Dan how integrations played a part in their ability to raise their Series A and scale the product.
So I think whether it's integrations or whether it's building other products on your platform, anywhere where it's a 1 + 1 = 3. So Sigstr on its own, integrated into Gmail and Outlook is okay. Sigstr plus your customer segments and targeted content based on those that might live in CRM or marketing automation. Now we're helping the marketer get more out of their investment in those tools, and they're getting more bang for their buck in targeted content every time an employee hits send. And so it's the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, right? Whether you're doing an integration or whether you're doing building a new product within your company, I think those two things tie closely together.
So aside from Gmail and Outlook, what was the first integration you set out to build for Sigstr?
Well, the first one, I think where we got a lot of traction was HubSpot. And what we've done then with HubSpot, we've replicated that model with some of the other marketing automation tools. But the reason we chose them was because they cared. I think that's a really important part of partnerships is they were actually leaning in, right? They're a publicly traded company, but cared about at the time, what was a 20-person company when we started that journey.
First of all, how did you decide on HubSpot? I understand they're great, they cared. Before that, are you sitting in a room deciding, are you prioritizing possibilities for integrations? What does that look like?
It's a balance. Like, what are the gaps in the product? Because we could have gone and we could have said, hey, bring all of your customer data to Sigstr and segment it all here. They're like, why would they want to do that? They already do that somewhere else.
Was there ever a moment, though, where you were sitting in that room advocating for that?
The natural inclination is to want to build everything and own everything. And I'll tell you an interesting story. So, I said to one of our early investors, I said, hey, I think I'm going to give Sigstr to HubSpot for free so that all of their customers will see what the product is. And when we go to the show, we'll make a big splash. And he said to me, so you're thinking about giving your tool away for free to potentially your biggest competitor. And sure, that could happen, but it wasn't really on HubSpot's radar or other partners' radars. So I said, yeah, we're going to do it. I think we should do it. And he said, well, one way or another, I think you have a chance to end up in a Harvard Business Review story.
Yeah, for better or for worse.
For better or for worse. And it's like, you just have to take those risks and try to find the right partners who you trust. Again, I think going back to your earlier question, it was, what are the gaps in our product? What adds, short-term value in terms of our ability to grow our business? Who could be more strategic partners long-term? But those first two buckets are always, I think, driving our decisions. And the last one is sort of out there as a consideration.
How do you decide if it's something to build into the product or something to integrate with?
as we've been in those meetings, I'm not sure we've defined this, but is it really like core? Is it essential tech that we need to own? Like if we partner on something and it goes away, can we still operate with confidence?
But evolving from there, at some point you made a decision to start working on what on the site now is called relationship intelligence. Take us back to where relationship intelligence started.
It came from a lot of questions from customers, and not that they said, hey, go build relationship intelligence, but customers would ask for things like, can you tell me who's opening my email? Can you tell me which companies we're sending the most email to? And we started to unpack those questions, right? Can you tell me who's clicking on my stuff or whatever it was? When we started to unpack those questions, it really came down to we being marketers would like to understand who our sales team is engaging so that we can prioritize the right activities to help. So we kind of zoomed out and we had some conversations, a couple iterations. Not all of them were great. And we said, I think what people really want to understand is they want to build a map of the collective network of the company based on who we email and who we have meetings with. If we'd flipped the order and we'd started relationship intelligence first and then started to do, we would have failed miserably.
Why do you say that?
I'll tell you a funny story. And this, I totally screwed this up. Our original website said no IT involvement required because marketers and salespeople did not want to go ask IT to help stand up something, right? Because IT is busy and they're just going to say no or whatever. Now, our sales process, you can't close a deal until we've sent your email administration team a 10-question sort of survey, and we've had a quick call to let them ask all the questions around security and privacy that are important to them. And so all that work that we had done and sort of the disciplines and the teams that we had built on the email signature marketing side, if we didn't have all of that understanding, people wouldn't let us do what we do with relationship intelligence.
We interrupt this conversation to give you more context. While our conversation with Dan was jam-packed full of goodies, which is a word I always use, we just don't have enough time on this episode to give you all the back and forth. One thing we found super interesting about Dan is that while he's the founder, he's not the CEO.
It's funny. It's taken, like, our team will be sitting there in a meeting with us, especially in the early days, and be like, what is going on? Because Brian thinks in sort of 2-year increments. Like, he's often talking about things that are maybe 2 years out, but he talks about them so that we can make the right decisions today to go out. And I'm talking about more like 3 to 6 months out, like more of a startup mindset. And so a lot of times, like I would find myself getting ready to say something. I was like, wait, Brian, give me a timeline of what you're talking about here. He's like, I'm 2 years. I was like, that's great. We can do anything in 2 years. Whereas in the early days, a lot of times I was like, there's no way we can go do that, Brian. Here's what we got to go do today to like live to fight another day and make sure we have the opportunities ahead of us. And he's like, I'm talking like 2 years from now. So we both have learned, like, he is a little bit more long-term thinking and I'm a little bit more, okay, but we got to keep the lights on and take care of our customers. If I had to characterize my job versus Brian's job, my job is to take new levers for the business. So 6 months ago is partnerships, integrations, agencies, and just trying to push as many of those forward as I could. And then relationship intelligence, we had been running a beta, which we started about a year ago, and we launched the product in August. Once we started getting closer to launch, it became pretty clear that we needed somebody just waking up every day thinking about relationship intelligence and how to make sure that launch in that first quarter was really successful. So that was my job. Now, as I get to this, it's just always changing, which I love.
Are there any things in the past couple of years that you start to become concerned about as you put distance between yourself and when something started? Or is everything just running smoothly, no issues?
No, there's always issues, but it's just trusting the people that are there. You know, when I really failed was probably when I tried to stay involved in all of it and not trust the people that we've hired to take care of things, and know that at the center, like, is sort of this culture value system that we're all aligned on, and knowing they'll do the right thing and they can, you know, always raise their hand for help at any point.
What was the point at which you kind of woke up and said, I've got to scale myself?
Every day, at the end of the day, I look at my to-do list. What did I get done? What makes it to the next page? And what I found was, like, there were these certain things, these projects, these things that I knew were so valuable for the business that I really was passionate about, but I couldn't get to them because all I was doing was reacting to the needs of the team, which that's what's most important, is the team. And so when all my days were a little bit more reactionary and I couldn't get to the proactive work that could fuel the business, that sort of sucks my soul a little bit. Together with our investors and our team, you know, I think we made a tough decision, but man, it feels great to be on the other side of it.
The tough decision being CEO.
Yeah, like, what do we do? Like, how the heck do I love this place. I love the team that's here. How do I stay a part of it? How do I add value? And then who the heck can we trust to give them the keys to the business to?
Ann and I were talking a little bit too about scaling your actual product team. So as I assume at some point, Brian Wade, your CEO, wouldn't be able to oversee the plethora of new features. So how do you scale a product team to sort of take those on?
So if I were to fast forward 6 months, I imagine we'll have product management leaders in email signature marketing and relationship intelligence. I will say that as we thought about this product, the other part, we got great advice from Brad Coffey at HubSpot, who was there in the early days and helped them become a multi-product company. And as we were going down that journey, we were like, what do you wish you would have known going into that? And he said, any product, sort of the litmus test for us is 3 things. Does it have a common buyer? Is it a common brand? Does this fit into the Sigstr brand? And is it on the same tech stack, right? Is it a platform? Or are we really just a collection of disparate products, right? And so for us, you log into the admin and across the left side, you see email signature marketing things and you see relationship intelligence things. And underlying both of those are employees that are sending email and lists of people that you're sending emails to. And so that sort of architecture and that structure of a common platform, I think that will continue to grow in terms of the options with relationship intelligence and email signature marketing.
Recently, you've talked about hoping to get your, I think, millionth user by 2020. Yeah. So what, in your mind, is the difference between trying to get the millionth user versus the first user? When you look back on that, what are key differences there?
I think it is such a leap of faith for the first user. Like all the time I see somebody that, and I know by heart our first 20 customers. And like anytime that I see like one of those people that was the buyer at one of those first customers, I'm like, thank you. Like anytime you need anything, I hope you will call and like, I'll buy whatever you need or, do what, like if you're selling something, I'll be your first customer. If you need help, I feel like I owe those people so much. A quick aside, I was charging $1 a user a month and that those early investors came in and they're like, Dan, what do we have to do to get to $1 million in recurring revenue? I said, we need 83,000 users or whatever the number was. And just to show how important it is to have people that have been there before. And he was like, well, what if we changed $1 user a month to $3 user a month? Would anybody care? And I was like, I don't know. So I went upstairs and I can't code, but I can change a 1 to a 3 in HTML. And I changed the 1 to a 3 on the website and nobody cared. And so the value we were providing, all of a sudden now I needed to only go get 20 some odd thousand users.
Big jump though, right?
So just those little things, pricing and packaging matters. Not to say you could charge anything, but there, what is the range of acceptable?
What led to the $1?
It was getting somebody to pay anything was just if I go back thinking about the early days, again, I don't think ideas are worth very much. Execution is worth a lot. So can we, spin up a slide deck? Okay, great. We have a slide deck. Can we spin up sort of a demo? Yes. Can we spin up a working version of this thing that somebody uses for free? Yes. Can we get somebody to pay anything? Yes. So it was just somewhat of an arbitrary number where the economics worked. Like so there were 2 forks in the road at that point. It was like, we could build this massively sort of self-service, long tail business servicing 10 employee companies. And we could focus a lot of product and energy there. Or we could build something that, served some of the larger companies, 50 plus, 100 plus, 10,000 plus employees. And that's really hard too. Like that's another sort of fork in the road. Like I didn't know where we were going to go. I think either of those are viable opportunities. And getting the opportunity to make that decision required somebody to pay something.
Right. I think a lot of startups struggle with pricing. I think there's a fear that, you did $1 per user, that if you do something like that, you've locked in and you're just done.
Right.
But obviously you've increased the prices since then. You've got so many more models for pricing based on what they're getting. How do you handle conversations where you've got to raise a price on a customer?
Some of those early customers were smaller businesses where what we built in 2015 worked. I mean, very quickly we started to add more to the platform. And so, it's just, if you want to stay where you are, that is totally fine. Like you can keep using what you're using. It's not going anywhere. We haven't sunsetted any product, knock on wood. So you can totally keep using it. Here's why we built this. Here's why it's adding more value. Here's why it's going to deliver more ROI for your business. We'd love to get you this costs X. And since you were an early customer, we'll discount that in a significant way for you. So you're going to pay more than what you were paying, but you're not going to pay as much as a net new customer would. That's kind of how we've handled it.
So when you had this goal of your millionth user by 2020, is that just was there any methodology behind?
Yeah, it's just basically our growth curve in terms of users.
What do you think was one of your biggest failures at Sigstr, and what do you feel like you learned from it?
I didn't understand how hard, I didn't have enough respect for engineering and design and product. And so I came back to the guys that had started that business. I said, guys, I'm fascinated by software. I want to get into the space. I said, what do you want to do? And so we came up with some idea, and I found a contractor, right, that had sort of been in our network. I knew he was a good engineer. He did good work for some of my customers. And I said, Greg, here's what we're going to do. It's going to be great. I'm going to check in with you in a week, and we're going to look at the progress you've made. I had no understanding of the discipline of writing requirements and going through that true product process. And I came back in a week, and I was like, why didn't you build it? Like, I told you this. And it was like, I can't believe we're not ready. And like, we kept going through this for like 3 months, and I was putting that blame on him. It was my fault. I had no idea. And so what I came to the realization of, like, really quickly, it's like, this is really hard. And if I'm going to get into the software world, I need a partner that I can trust, that understands how to build software. And so that experience, it took us 3 months. We spent maybe 10 grand, and we had absolutely nothing on what like, looking back now is a really simple idea to go out and execute on. And so just making sure that I wasn't surrounding myself with like-minded people, and that I valued the heck out of people that could do things that I can't do.
Why do you say like-minded people? Like, why is that something to avoid?
Maybe not like-minded, similarly skilled. Like, if you're in college and you go to all the business club meetups because you're in business school, or if you're an engineer and you go to all the engineering meetups because you're in engineering school, then you're going to graduate and you're going to know a bunch of people just like you. But if I'm in the business school and I go hang out at the engineering club, now I've got a kind of a tandem there that's pretty cool. And so I think it's the same thing in the professional world, just finding people that cover your blind spots that you can go out and build something worthwhile.
So this is the last question I'm going to ask you. What does better product mean to you?
Better product means less rework. Better product means customers are actually using it and getting value with as little rework as possible. And so I think that comes all the way back to talking to customers first, making sure engineering is close to the customer, not just having somebody in between. And so better product to me is building things of value that customers use with minimal rework.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah.
That was Dan Hanrahan, and the best place to learn about Sigstr is sigstr.com. That's
sigstr.com.
.com, just to be clear. I just want to spell every single thing out.
Don't mansplain to me how to spell a URL.
My bad. Sigstr.com is hiring. So if you're interested in that, check out their careers page on the site. And if you want to connect with Dan, check him out on Twitter at Dan Hanrahan8. That's DanHanrahan8.
Every time there's a consonant, just throw an A behind it.
Yep, just put an A right in there. He has most of the A's on the internet,
That's
all
right.
in his Twitter handle. So easy way to remember. This is the part of the show where we debrief about our conversation with Dan Rahan.
Dan Rahan.
I think it was refreshing to hear that you don't always necessarily have to have the big vision. He almost just had like a slice, like one little piece, like one little like spark or tender or whatever, and just opportunity. And then he's just sort of like following the opportunity. And the way I think Dan as a person, I know our focus is on the product, but I think Dan as a person, being able to be the driver of the vision and then set that aside and bring a CEO in and still be the idea person, where he's just constantly in this state of sparking up new ideas. And I think like for what you do with research, I think is interesting because he seems to just constantly find that inspiration from constant ongoing customer research.
I think he does research in a really good way, a way that we don't hear a lot of people talk about. It's like that research for inspiration. And it's not that he's, analyzing and looking for, he's not measuring things. He's really looking for opportunities. So he's taking what he hears from customers and he's putting it through his lens of, is this a great idea? Is this a market?
Yeah.
Is this aligned to what we want to do?
And he also was very clear, I'm not talking to customers they're not telling me necessarily they want it, but he's hearing it. And this is something that you do a lot with clients. I think a lot of times people think about like usability research, like existing product, researching how to optimize a product and that sort of stuff. But what you often do is when you're working with startups is kind of get people to think about what you just said is research that's forward-looking, that it's not about an existing product. Can you talk more about how you do that with clients, how you actually kind of replicate what Dan does at Sigstr, where you're taking insights you're getting from customers and turning them into forward-looking features?
The way that we like to think about it is we are using customers to inspire us, but they're not giving us the ideas. But I think of it a little bit like a math equation where it's more of like what the customer gives us plus kind of what we see in the market, like divided by our business strategy kind of thing. So we only want to filter out what fits and what's relevant to kind of our business goals or what we want to do. But I think there's also something too of like our product expertise. So we've worked with lots of products. We've worked with lots of startups. We know what's a good and valid idea and what's not. I think, and that's what Dan brings. He brings expertise. He's built products. He's scaled products, and he brings that to these conversations. And I don't think you can understate that.
Right. We definitely talked a lot about integrations, and I think we see that with a lot of companies too. I think what he was kind of hinting at some point, you're using integrations as a growth strategy. So the relationship they've created with HubSpot is unique and valuable to them because it's helping them grow. Other integrations that he mentioned, I think, are more functional. Like, we just need to have this because our customers need it. And it's a value add. We're not going to charge more in some cases, but these are things that they just have to even do their work. But I thought it was interesting when he's talking about HubSpot, because when he detailed how they leverage them as almost a symbiotic partner where they're doing something for them and HubSpot's helping them. And again, to what you just brought up too about the risk, it's not even just like giving them their idea, but like once they sort of pitched it, doing it for free was huge.
You mean HubSpot?
Yeah. We didn't ask him any of the numbers, but we can just assume that he is still standing here today, several years later, that it must have worked. But I think that's a really bold product decision on the integrations, and I don't know that will work for everybody to do something like that. I think he covered a lot of the details around what you should be asking yourself when you look at that integration. But I think if there's one inspiration I would hope that other people in product would take from that is that you don't just have to look at integrations as sort of a functional thing that your product has to do, but find other opportunities to work with them on how they can become marketing on your behalf, how they can drive your own sort of growth.
I just want to reiterate what he said. 3 things to think about with a new product. Is it a common buyer? Can it fit under a common brand? Does it have the same tech stack? Thanks so much for listening to the show this week. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Until then, visit innovatemap.com/podcast and subscribe to learn how you can take your product to the next level. As always, we're curious, what does better product mean to you? Hit us up on Twitter at Innovatemap or shoot us an email at podcast@innovatemap.com.
I'm Christian.
And I'm Anna. And you've been listening to Better Product.
Better Product.
Drop mic.